So welcome again. I'm Tom Massaros. I'm a board member of Edmonds Civic Roundtable, and we're glad that you came out on such a sunny summer evening. Isn't it great to be past July 4th and know that summer has finally arrived in Edmonds? So it's a great thing. So we're fortunate tonight to have our speaker who I'm going to introduce for a minute. But I just want to remind you that Edmonds Civic Roundtable is a civic organization that's nonpartisan and designed to bring information to the electorate. And so I'm glad that we have a good representation of that here today. We're glad you took the time to be with us. I also want to remind you that we are a nonprofit organization, and we exist and we have to pay our bills through the generosity of the people that participate. And we've always wanted to be an organization that was open to everyone, our members and anybody else who wanted to attend. So we're glad that you came, but we'd really be gladder if you joined. So if you want to become a member, please stop by the desk over here, and there's a brochure and information about how to do that. And the membership is a whopping $25 a year. So, but that will help us immensely as we plan our programs and move forward as we think about, we're already starting to think about 2026 and the programs that we want to have next year. The other thing is a number of you came through the back door. And so when you leave, go through the front door and let the desk know that you're here so we can check your name off and we can keep track of attendance of who's coming to our meetings. So that would be very helpful for us as well. So I get to introduce Jeremy Mitchell, who's a member of the Planning Board. Jeremy joined the Planning Board in 2023. His term on that board ends in 2027. He is going to give us some information on what the Planning Board does and why it's important to Edmonds. And most people don't realize that the Planning Board in Edmonds is also the Park Board in Edmonds and responsible for all of our parks and makes recommendations to the City Council for the various things that need to happen in our parks. Jeremy is from a family of 4. He has 2 children. They've lived in Edmonds since 2020. That must be a story, moving to town during the pandemic. I bet it was a story, moving that. He's been an architect for 19 years. He's actually a vandal. Who knows what a vandal is? University of Idaho. He's a graduate of the University of Idaho. And being a vandal is something I've always aspired to be. When asked about what describes he and his family, he said, "We are avid park and beachgoers." And he lives in the right city because we have good parks and we have good beaches. So it's nice to have him here. Jeremy, come up and share about what's going on from the Planning Board and about housing and hubs and centers. Yes.
Check, check, check. Can you all hear me back there? Okay. Awesome. Well, thanks for having me, Jeremy Mitchell. As Tom said, I have been a member of the Planning Board, and I was also a member of the Edmonds Historical Preservation Commission prior to joining the Planning Board. I love Edmonds just as much as you guys love Edmonds. The insurmountable beauty, the never-ending things that you could find on a walk, and more importantly, the people, to be honest with you. But you know, Tom was just talking about the front door and back door. I'm about to give you some inconvenient truths tonight, and hopefully your reactions doesn't make me go out the back door. But no, look, it's about housing tonight. We're very passionate here in Edmonds about housing. It's been historical since, well, 1890, okay. No, we love it. We have our own expectations of what it should be, of where it's going to go. Unfortunately, there was a lot of things that were out of our control in the last couple of years that we've now had to take in, analyze, and effectively implement, which, you know, is not to maybe most of our standards or way of doing things. I intend to explore those with you, have a discussion about what we think needs to happen, and what things are in the works in the next few months. So a short bio about me. Oh, whoa. What's ironic here is this photo was taken about 10 years ago, and I still have the same shirt. I'm wearing that tonight. Gosh.
So is that you're thrifty then? You're very
I guess so. Wow. I am originally from Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, the upper panhandle of Idaho. I was born and raised there, and it was actually much a town like this, very picturesque, a great community, a small community, very small town feel. It too also had its planning issues with growth and how to take it in and how to implement in the best way, a realistic way that made sense for the community. And actually they're reeling about it right now. I follow them all the time. They're going through the same issues as we're going through, as almost every other American city is going through as well. A little about my practice. I'm currently the Pacific Northwest Division Manager for an architecture and engineering firm that consults with a lot of other engineers and architects on a variety of different building types, everything from multifamily, new construction, existing, all the way through government, all the way through airports, healthcare, the whole 9 yards. You say it, I've done it. And what the benefit of that is, like, you get exposed to a variety of different types of how they actually implement these buildings, what they have to do to actually get it across the finish line, and actually how much they cost. Tom just described what I love about Edmonds. Yes, my family and I are parks people. I'm pretty sure my son and daughter are down at the beach right now, swimming in the water. It's just great. We love this town very much. We love its walkability. We love its small town feel. And we're here to help maintain it. Long-range planning at Edmonds. So I want to start by saying decades ago, I'm talking about significant decades ago, like let's say 1950s, our neighborhoods were actually slowly changing. Not all at once, but slow and quietly over time, incrementally. And through the process and through the years, one requirement here, one requirement there, one restriction here, one restriction there, it started to add up. Over time. It made building actually difficult. It made it significantly difficult. And when it's significantly difficult, it actually costs more. And the more restrictions that we actually put in place, the harder it was to build, drove up cost, people kept on coming. When people come, demand is high, prices are high. So the presentation tonight is really why the state is doing what they're doing and how we can actually implement it in a way that best makes sense with us and also nets the requirements, potentially affordability requirements that we're all seeking, or at least we think we're seeking. So long-range planning, it's different than short-range planning. It's more than just looking to next week, next month, next year. It's far in advance. And what I like about this photo is this was actually taken from COVID, but the Edmonds Theater is like, we will not be broken, we are evolving. And that's exactly what Edmonds is doing on a daily basis. It's evolving, it's changing. You may not know, it may not be drastic, but a new neighbor that moves in tomorrow, that's a change. A new restaurant that moves in downtown the next week, that's a change. So I want to underscore this. So really, the long-range planning aspect of what we do here is we're really bringing we're bringing the problems of the future at the forefront, so we actually effectively plan for it. And so when we look at long-range planning, like we're looking on a time scale of like 20 to 50 years. And so if you can imagine where you're going to be 20 to 50 years from now, or where your kids or your grandkids are going to be for 20, 50 years from now. That's actually what we're planning in addition to us that's here already. So what it takes is a comprehensive plan. It takes a holistic plan, a 10,000 foot, 30,000 foot level plan that actually outlines how we're going to do that. What are we going to do with transportation? What are we going to do with housing? What are we going to do with parks and open space? What are we going to do about economics? So if you talk to any council member, they might tell you that we're up against weighing a lot of competing interests of the city, and that's a true statement. This is a this is a typical ecosystem of any city in America today. So what we're about to talk about is just one of those components, and a very minor component. We have all of these other components that we also need to plan for and balance out.
Since that's hard to read, can you read those out for us so we can?
Absolutely.
Sure.
So we have smart infrastructure, or just basic infrastructure, buildings and land uses, transportation, open spaces and landscape, city resiliency and flexibility, social cohesion and activities, economic strength, and integration with the environment. So when we talk about a plan, it obviously has to be vision and goal oriented, focused on the future, be able to be flexible in adaptability, and be data driven in our decision making. So if you've been following the local news, we, council, adopted our comprehensive plan, which is everybody's Edmonds, back in December of 2024. And I always tell people this: the most accurate information you can actually find on the city's website here under everyone's Edmonds, I think .gov, and it shows everything that you need to know about where we've been and where we're going, what the growth targets, what the alternatives are, what the community outreach that was involved, and all the project documents and data that was evaluated as part of the putting together the elements. So, like any city, part of long-range planning is involving boards and commissions, and those are the folks that are put on the board by the mayor, and we represent you guys. We try to have a variety of people on the board with various backgrounds, various opinions, and we do the vetting, the deep diving for the council. And so what our charter says is, what our handbook says is, we review all the amendments and revisions to the comprehensive plan, all amendments to the parking. We are also the parks board as well, so we review all acquisitions and changes in the parks. And then we do any subcommittee work or special projects that's assigned to us by the council and or the mayor. The whole intent is to deep dive, collect the data, ask the tough questions, and come with a recommendation that is solid, that gets directed to council for their consideration and adoption, in part or in whole. So when I look at long-range planning, it's really truly a collaborative effort. It involves us, the community, the stakeholders, involves the boards and commissions, the mayor and city council, and the planning staff. And it's an iterative circular process where we're constantly in a feedback loop of taking in information, researching, finding out more information, bringing it back to the board, what's working, what's not, hearing your concerns, etc. All to get to a recommendation that works for the city, its current residents and its future residents. So housing and the Growth Management Act. So I want to preface this with, when we talk about the GMA and actually the comprehensive plan and only the housing component, you almost have to match it up with the rest of the elements, because the rest of the elements tailor to it. The transportation plan tailors to the housing. Parks and open space tailors to the housing. The economics tailors to the housing. But we're only going to go briefly into the housing component of it, because we want to look at what it's going to look like long range here. So a brief framework. So you guys probably all know that the GMA, the Growth Management Act, was enacted in 1990, and this is the general framework. And what's important to understand about the general framework is it requires us to be coordinated with all of these other stakeholders and counties. And so the Growth Management Act being the state, they hand their requirements and policies down to Puget Sound Regional Council, which has their Vision 2050, which is effectively their comprehensive plan. They then hand their requirements and planning policies down to the county level, which is Snohomish County. And then from there, we have to coordinate with locally with the county planning policies, and our policies have to align with theirs. So the overall goal was to really effectively plan growth wisely while taking into account the sensitivities to environment, the sensitivities to our capital facilities, to overall promote sustainable development and actually efficient development of our land. So we're taking out more land and doing urban sprawl, diving into our natural resources. So something to focus on here, this is our urban growth area, or UGA. This is the Puget Sound Urban Growth Area. What's important to note is that it's divided up into regional geographies or classifications. Edmonds and its MUGA being Municipal Urban Growth Area, is considered a high capacity transit community, or HCT. That's important to take note of as we move forward into the housing requirements, because the community planning policies actually direct the majority of future growth towards HCT communities. So high level, if we look at population growth and where growth is going to be distributed, this is from the Puget Sound Regional Council, their Vision 2050. Under the regional growth strategy, they outline what the projected population is going to be, which county it's going to be divvied up under, and then where it's going to actually be placed in terms of the classifications of the city: high capacity transit, core cities, metro cities, etc. So if you notice here, Snohomish is actually getting the bulk of the projected growth in the future. So part of analyzing the data, both at the Puget Sound Regional Council level and the Snohomish County, is that they are constantly reviewing reports and they're constantly monitoring over time. So when they divvy a report up to the subcommittee group or the steering committee, it goes in with the notion that it's going to be looked at later on and it's going to be adjusted accordingly. It's never a resolute thing where, hey, this might be the growth, but we're going to check in to see if we're actually tracking towards it, and we can make adjustments accordingly. So this is the framework. How do we get growth allocated to Edmonds when it's coming from the state? Well, it starts here, the Office of Financial Management, or the OFM. There's a reason why the state elected the OFM, is because they were a fraction more accurate than the census, all of 0.01%. And so they do the housing, or they do the population projections, and they're really accurate at doing it. So they do it on a straight line analysis over a period of 20 years. And that's the metric that they use to pass on to the actual region. And so based on the population projections, they pass those numbers on to the Puget Sound Regional Council, which effectively plans around the whole Puget Sound urban growth area under the Vision 2050 growth strategy, and is essentially their comprehensive plan. Based on their planning policies, they divvy up that growth to each county, and each county then has their own subcommittee or steering committee. Ours is called Snohomish County Tomorrow. It effectively oversees and establishes the countywide planning policies. And if you know about the SCT, each city is actually representative on it by an elected official. So during the comp plan update, we actually had a multitude of different people based on who was in and out of office, who was in and out of the director position. So I believe at the time, Councilmember Olson was part of it, and then right now I believe Councilmember Nand is our representative for the SCT. But they essentially attend meetings. They get the information provided from the Planning Advisory Committee, which also works with the Community Advisory Board, which is made up of citizens as you and I. And they essentially divvy up the growth by city. And so once that's done, they they essentially put a recommendation together and hand it down to the Snohomish County Tomorrow Steering Committee. And the Steering Committee essentially formulates, analyzes the data, formalizes an actual recommendation to the Snohomish County Council. The council adopts it. Then it finally comes to City of Edmonds. So now that we're here, because this was a vote of contention early on in the comprehensive plan, is Edmonds now has a plan based on initial population projection for 13,113 people over the next 20 years. And of that, we have to plan for 9,069 housing units. So when we got that data, we essentially derived it and worked it into our comprehensive plan of elements, which was adopted this December. And where we're at now is we are here in actually implementing the comprehensive plan into our planning and development and land use codes. So what does the growth look like, or how did it start? How did we come up with these centers and hubs, and what is the significance behind it? When we first talk about growth and where we're going to distribute it, you actually have to do an existing analysis report. It's called a buildable lands report, and then the housing and assessment report, or the HO5 report. It essentially tells you the needs of each community, what housing types you need based on income level, how many lots are about to be developed or about to maintain, or that might turn over. And then essentially they give you this is the buildable lands report, a markup of your land use map on applicable parcels that are or can be slated to be part of your projected growth or allocation to growth based on housing. So how we got to centers and hubs is there's a community planning policy from the Snohomish County Tomorrow. The county planning policy goals actually dictate that we have to, at a minimum, drive most of our growth in regional centers and hubs, and in areas where there is transit close by, areas that are walkable to amenities, etc. So that's how we came up with this. When you go and derive growth and you come up with growth scenarios, part of the environmental impact statement process is that we have to provide more than just one alternative or growth scenario. And so early on, you guys may have heard this in the local news, is that we were evaluating 2 different scenarios and plus one no action, which is your baseline. So no action means that we're not doing anything, it's just baseline. If we do nothing, do we comply, do we not comply, etc. The other option is taking the growth and distributing it in different ways. So right here we have focused growth, and then to the right we have distributed growth. And what you'll notice is the focused growth, the majority of the growth is being positioned in various centers that are already established. Versus distributed growth is what we kind of determine as a share of the wealth scenario. And it's more distributing growth in both centers and in neighborhood hubs. And again, these are areas that are already developed with commercial, already have infrastructure in place. So growth allocation. Since we entered on the premise of centers and hubs, what council initially adopted and what the planning board recommendation was essentially a hybrid of the two, focused and distributed growth. So we landed somewhere right in the middle, and that netted us a certain amount of units. Overall, our housing target was 9,069 units, and of the centers and then hubs, plus the ADUs that were already adopted and the middle housing that's about to, that was actually just adopted too, we ended up on a zone capacity for 9,961, so about 800 units over our target. There is a reason for that. So part of why we want to over-project is that from a planning standpoint, you do want the flexibility to be able to horse trade between areas. What makes more sense from a growth allocation standpoint? Maybe a center can do another 300 units here versus this other hub we may need to take 50 units from there. What it also does is provides us flexibility for when we actually dive into the codes. The standards, the setbacks, the building setbacks. When we look at zone capacity, it's the highest and best use of that piece of land. After we get done regulating it with all the standards, all the setbacks, whatever restrictions that we ever want to throw on it, it's going to net a different number than this because it's reduced. We're reducing the buildable envelope of that specific land use. What's also important to note about our allocated housing here is that the middle housing, we're essentially taking all the current RS zones or the single-family residential zones, and we're converting them to low-density residential, and that's our missing middle housing. So that's our HB 1110 that just got passed, just got adopted. But what you notice is of the units that actually count towards our overall growth, it's very minimal. And there is a reason for that. Because the building types that come along with middle housing are outside of the income types that we need to plan for in a high-cost community like Edmonds. And here's what that means. So part of the Snohomish County HO5 report, the Housing Characteristics and Needs report, it designates different building types: low density, moderate density, low rise, mid rise. It also classifies from a market rate standpoint and with subsidies where that lands on the area median income, or AMI. And since Edmonds needs to plan for this amount of units in each AMI category, it only gets us to the low-rise and mid-rise building types. And where those are going currently, or where they're slated to go, is the centers. So the hubs and centers. So high-level hubs and centers is going to incorporate the bulk of our building types that will get us to these income levels. And the middle housing, or the HB 1110, is going to be beyond. So that it'll be beyond those and act as transition zones. And each RS zone will now be able by right to pick and choose from 6 specific middle housing types. So housing and attainability, that's been a big topic on a lot of people's minds. How am I going to be able to afford to live here, especially if I am on a fixed income, I'm retired, or maybe I'm just starting out in the community and I need to figure out how I can actually attain housing and get by, given where the prices are at these days. I want to show something. This is from an actual psychologist. This is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And so what you'll notice here is that the basic needs of any human being, what needs to be met, is breathing, food, water, shelter, clothing, and sleep. And the premise behind this hierarchy of needs is, in order to get to these upper ones, it presupposes that these basic needs are met. And once we have all of this, that's the definition of the quality of life. So I'm going to pause because I've been talking too much. By a show of hands, and if you're uncomfortable with this question, that's fine. How many in this room today are cost burdened by housing? Okay. That's good. Cost burdened by housing. And so cost burdened per HUD is, the burden is the housing cost plus utilities exceeding 30% of your gross income. And then extremely burdened is housing costs and utilities exceeding 50% of your gross income. And that's relative to the AMI. So Edmonds is right here in terms of cost burden, at least the percentage based on the census. So that's actually a pretty big number that we have to plan for, both from a home ownership standpoint and a rental standpoint.
So read those numbers for us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So this is the vertical column is percentage 0 to 60. This first column here is less than 20%, 20 to 29.9% in the middle, and then 30 to 34.9%. And the purple, it might look blue where you're at. The purple is actually homeownership versus the yellow is rentals.
And those are 2020 numbers, if I looked at that correctly.
2020, yeah, and 2020 was the basis for the comp plan update for 2024. So, I also want to lead with this question as we move through the rest of the presentation. What did it take you all to get to Edmonds? And what housing types did it take you to get here? And what are you currently living in? I want to share my own journey here because it might shed some light on why the legislation that's in place is where it's at. So since this text is so small, I'll also read this, but when I graduated college back in 2007, I was actually not rent burdened, I was debt burdened. I had a significant amount of student loan debt. It was almost the cost of additional rent, it was that bad. And that was actually the norm for at least my demographic, is we would take out significant loans to fund the education, get the degree, be straddled with, 50 to 100,000 in student debt, and have to go out with a low-paying job right out of the get-go and try to make rent. So I had to get creative. So my rent in 2007 was actually $795 per month, and my rent-to-income ratio is 25.4%. But what this, again, doesn't show is my debt burden. I was actually struggling. Today, in 2025, that $795 per month has increased to $1,380 per month on the same building. And if you guys want to confirm this, I put the building types up here and their names, and so you can actually go check to see what they are today. But that's a net increase of 73%. I was one of those that moved around a lot. I actually lived out of boxes. And the reason why I was living out of boxes is because I wanted to dodge the rent increases per year, because they would regularly increase the rent 8 to 10%, almost without question, regardless of what the market was doing. So I actually moved a lot, but I moved into various housing types that actually supported the ability for me to be able to afford rent and pay off my debt. And so I actually moved into a market rate with roommates, and so essentially my rent was subsidized at that point. Because my roommates were paying, at the time, 3/4, and I was paying 1/4. And so my portion of rent to income was about 18.7%. Another thing I want to highlight here is actually the vacancy rate at the time, because economically, the vacancy rate on any city has a lot to do with the affordability and the supply of what's available. Over time, I then moved into several other housing types. I lived in a single-family home with a bunch of roommates. I lived in a garden-style walk-up community in Linwood. Moved back into old brick stack flats. That's where I met my wife. And then eventually ended up in a condo, ended up in a shack in Ballard, a 710 square foot shack. Boy, that was quite the deal. But what's important to note is the rent at the time to what the rent is now, it's significantly more, it's substantially more.
Read those numbers out loud.
Yeah, absolutely. So in 2011, my rent at the time was $875 per month, and the rent in 2025 on that same apartment building is $1,895. It's a net increase of 116%. A year later, vacancy rate at 4.2, which is quite low. Like, the vacancy rate to be a healthy market where it's a rental market is actually at 6%. And actually our comprehensive plan makes us plan at 6%. But these are, Seattle at the time was actually going through a growth boom, but it was also going through a downturn, but people didn't leave. They lost their jobs, but they never left. So the vacancy rate was historically low. So that drove rent cost up. So 2013, back in a 696 square foot condominium, roommates again, my spouse. My rent to income ratio was 16%. We were actually, we were finally jointly at that time. But rent in that same place now, it went from $1,500 to $2,600 today. So that's a net increase of 73%. That little shack in Ballard, net increase of 39% in rent. So you probably kind of see the relationship here, the pattern of where this is going is the low vacancy rates at the time still resulted in high rental cost, and is exacerbated now with the rental rates in 2025 on those same buildings. So you're anywhere from 35% all the way up to 100+%, depending on the building type. And then finally, the stars aligned. We were able to purchase our house in Edmonds. Reason being is I was able to leverage different housing types and be able to subsidize my rent with roommates to pay off my debt, to prep me for a down payment on a home in 2020, which Tom said, like, that must have been interesting because yes, it was. Like, as you guys probably recall, that was the time when the bidding wars were at the height and people were showing up with straight cash for the whole thing. So it took a very sappy love letter to the existing homeowners and we actually got in, and the rest is history. But if you can see here, what we bought it for, $730,000, the net increase of assessed value today is 35% more in just such a short amount of time.
It's the 2.6 interest you can't get. So
Correct.
Now it's 987 at 7%.
Yes, that's the other thing. Gosh, what do they call that? It's like the golden. Yes, thank you. And so you have people not wanting to move out because they want to maintain that interest rate. And honestly, that's us. Like, I don't ever see myself moving out of there anytime soon. Because the next interest rate is what, in the 7s? So again, I leveraged the supply, which was out of my control at the time, but I also had control of the variety of options that were available to me. And I ended up selecting housing types that weren't luxurious. They were actually older housing stock. They didn't have the amenities in the units, and the quality construction was like from the 1930s, 1940s, and so, the floors creaked a little bit. Construction standards now has significantly changed. Like, it's morphed into something that is almost unattainable, and it makes it really difficult to build. So this takes me to a little study, the Edmonds median multiplier over the years. And that's the median multiplier for the realtors in the room is the average home price divided by the average household income. And the median net multiplier is the same as 1/3 of your income towards housing. And so a median multiplier of 3 or below generally is considered an affordable housing market. And then when you get above 3, you can see the different tiers here: moderately unaffordable 3.1 to 4, seriously unaffordable 4.1 to 5, severely unaffordable 5.1 to 8.9, and possibly unaffordable 9.0 or more. What I want to highlight here is that Edmonds, at one point in time, way back in the day, was considered affordable. The average home price to the average income price in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s was such that the median multiplier actually met that 3.0 or below. But that was partially because banks were only lending a certain amount of loans, usually like 2 times your income or 3 times your income. They don't do that anymore. They lend far beyond the capacity of what you actually make. So the numbers succeeding this are significantly skewed because of that aspect. But 1990 hit, and so that's when we adopted the GMA in urban growth area. It was formed in 1990. That's what makes the Puget Sound urban growth area. What you'll notice here at the time is the Edmonds average home price was $93,200, with the average income $40,515, the median multiplier of 2.3.
So if I read that data right, a house in 1990 was cheaper than a house in 1950.
Essentially because your salary was increased, yeah. There's something to note though about this urban growth area is, if anybody knows anything about basic economics, is when you constrain something and it's a high demand area, what happens? It instantly goes up. So more demand in a small amount of area, it increases in price, and we're going to start to see that here. The 2000s, the average home was $353,000 with the average income of $65,644. And so we jumped from 2.3 to 5.37. And as you get through the early 2000s, late 2000s, and on to 2025, it goes from 5.37 to 6.1 to 7 to 8.1. And so what that looks like on a scale, this is actually from the U.S. Federal Housing Finance Agency on all home purchases within the last, recorded area. This is from 1970 all the way up to 2025. So it's off the chart. It's off the chart so much that I had to add the numbers in to show where we started down here, where the Growth Management Act actually was enacted, and what that did for growth and housing costs. It's pretty substantial. So when we talk about housing affordability and how to potentially attain it in Edmonds, with this metric in place, it starts to add up, and it even more so adds up because we have a lot of demand. We also incorporating a lot of regulations. What happens when we add more regulations? We add more cost to things. So the building codes over time have actually changed from 1950 to 2025, significantly. There's been 17 code cycles since then, and of the 17, the current code cycle is the most stringent. But over time, you add the land use restrictions, the environmental restrictions, the stormwater management, the design standards, the added steps in the building process, such as design review or multiple design reviews, expanded building and energy codes. It all of a sudden makes that attainable housing that I started out in unreachable if that same building were to be built today. Also, what's happening is a stagnant supply. So for each market correction, it takes 5 to 7, sometimes 10 years to make up for that. And those are years where things aren't being built, and so there's a lag in supply. So you add all those factors up: urban growth boundary, demand, high salaries, people wanting to move here, a confined area, more land use restrictions, stagnant supply. No wonder we're here. Again, long are the days of building back in the 50s. This is actually my home's original building permit from 1961. And for the architects in the room, if there is any outside of myself, if you've done architecture back in the 60s or 50s or even 70s all the way up to 80s, it was customary to actually, you could file a building permit and get it same day, and all you needed was a napkin sketch of your floor plan. That was it. Pay the fee, be on your way, and you would be building a week later. This doesn't happen now. 2025, the average permitting times for, let's say, a single family home in Edmonds, given the staffing shortages, and actually other jurisdictions too. If you're lucky, you might get out of there in 6 months with a permit. On buildings of anything else other than single-family homes, such as middle housing, townhouses, stacked flats, or multi-use residential buildings like 3 or 5 stories, the permitting time on those is more than a year. And then depending on how many design reviews that you have to go through and the iterations of going back to them multiple times, implementing their feedback, it just adds several months onto that equation. So, what did the state do to take all this cost information into play, lack of supply, increased housing costs? It's a housing crisis. They literally did a shotgun approach. And they're going to continue doing a shotgun approach until the market adjusts, unfortunately. If you're tracking the House bills or Senate bills like I am and like the council members are and like the mayor is, these are only the first dozen that are coming our way. And so each legislative session, they're constantly making updates to the housing bills and they're sending them our way to implement. So of the critical ones, what we all know, the HB 1110, that's the missing middle housing. It followed up later last year with HB 2321, which really just clarified some things on middle housing that the jurisdictions had questions for commerce on. 1337, which was our ADUs. 1217, which is rent stabilization. 5058, which is a condo reform. If you notice that they haven't built condos in a long time, it's because we put so much regulation into place that lawsuits would happen almost the minute that you filed for your substantial completion. There'd be a lawsuit on your table like the next day. And so people were very gun shy about building condos. And so it reforms the condo law, the RCW 645590, and reduces the chances of the developer or the builder getting sued. Or if they do, it sends it essentially to arbitration immediately, and they can only collect on the limits of the insurance policy at the time, instead of litigating. SB 5258, increasing supply and affordability condos. Utility connection waiver fees. This is a recent one, SB 5148, parking requirements. Of note, the planning board and council has not adopted those. We've updated our parking to meet the new code, but not by virtue of the SB 5148. That was for a good reason. Parking is expensive though. It adds substantial cost to projects. But given that we have all of these things that are being put on our community to plan for, we were kind of thinking that maybe the parking requirements could wait. So yeah, it costs a lot to build. This data here, you could actually get online at the Washington State Housing Finance Commission affordable housing cost data. It's an annual report that they publish based on what it takes to build a single housing unit in each county. And as you can see here, the per unit and the median per residential square foot price substantially increased. Look at Pierce County, $774 per square foot. And so here's just a pie chart of the project cost, and this is really important because maybe if you're not familiar with construction or how things get developed, it's not just materials and labor. There's hard costs, which is the direct construction cost to build a thing and to manage it. And there's the soft costs. There's my fees. There's land acquisition costs. There's taxes. There's the development costs and impact fees by the jurisdiction. There's a permit review cost, which is usually 2% of the overall project valuation. And then financing costs on the back end if you're planning to finance projects. But a recent study, this was back in March 2025, the Building Industry Association of Washington reported that Construction costs are not getting cheaper. They aren't, even with the implementation of these bills. Though they haven't really had enough time to cycle through yet to really net an outcome yet. But they're essentially saying like, nothing's changed. So I want to show a couple of case studies. This is an Issaquah living building / affordable housing project that was built in the Highlands back in 2012. All these certifications, all these environmental sustainability items, and in the end, back in 2012, minus land costs, the building cost per building, there was 5 buildings total, was 3.3 million per building. And so in 2025, the equivalent cost is 4.2 million. In the end, the program netted only one affordable unit, and that was established in 2016. Another case study, this is Missy Middle Housing. So this is 3rd Street Cottages. This is in Whidbey Island. If you guys have ever been to Whidbey Island or Langley, off the downtown there's these little pocket cottage developments. At the time, they were actually built in 1998, and actually they were reasonably affordable at the time. But the development alone, just to develop the land because it was all forest land and they didn't have the utilities to get to it, it was still $30 million to develop that whole development. But it netted a unit cost of about $269,000, just over $269,000. But that development today is substantially more. It'd be $59 million in 2025 dollars.
Basically double.
Yeah. So middle housing. A lot of people are concerned about, a lot of Edmonds residents are concerned about this, what it's going to do to our single family neighborhoods. So HB 1110 requires us to select 6 of the 9 middle housing types. But I want to first start by showing what we actually have existing in our city today that is already middle housing. So we have several structures that are along 3rd Avenue. We have several structures in actually the US Park neighborhood, which is Duplex Row. Recently, right across the street from Bar Americana, there's actually a sixplex, sorry, that actually transitions into a single family home, like within one parcel. And in my opinion, they did a pretty good job at the time. This is a 1980s building. This is a gambrel house, probably built in the late 70s, probably. Another one along 3rd Avenue. This is the Edmonds Apartments. It's a courtyard apartment development. Here's another one. This is right in the heart of the bowl. So this is a 4-plex built in, gosh, I looked it up one time. I thought it was in 60 something, but to either side is a single family home, and there's a 4-plex right in the middle. And so when we talk about middle housing, it actually already exists today. You just probably haven't noticed it. So what does 1110 actually require us to do? Well, Tier 2 cities, which are cities of at least 25,000 and less than 75,000 in population, it requires us to plan for 2 units per lot and up to 4 units per lot within a half-mile walking distance, permitting that 1 unit is made affordable. Of the housing types that were adopted, the planning board said, and this was actually based on public feedback, is, hey, we don't mind the duplex, triplex, 4-plex, but we hate the townhouses. So get rid of those. And so yeah, we got rid of the townhouses, we got rid of the 6-plexes, the 5-plexes, pretty much the larger density types of the missing middle housing, and the housing types that netted an aesthetic that, you know, nobody likes. So we had recommended to the council that the remaining 6 building types be adopted. We kind of went beyond, we did go beyond, and said, hey, of the 6 building types, 2, we should probably consider increasing the lot coverage from 35% to 45%. That's primarily for the courtyard apartments and cottage housing, since they need a little bit more room to be actually livable. In the end, council ended up adopting, for the most part, the planning board's options, but changed the lot coverage back to our existing development standards of 35%. What that does, though, is it essentially eliminates pretty much anybody building courtyard apartments and cottage housing, unless you're on a LDR large lot. So again, when we talk about affordability, we talk about regulation and what it does. You know, you're eliminating the housing type that could potentially provide an affordability metric for somebody. Neighborhoods, centers, and hubs are in CH zones. So I'm outlining that this is in progress because it actually is. It's not officially adopted yet. The planning board is actually going through the code as we speak, the draft code as we speak, and we're finalizing, you know, where commercial frontages land in reference to the right-of-ways, bonus floor incentives for providing affordable housing, meaning that there's a base maximum height, but there could be a bonus floor in addition if they provide a certain percentage of affordable units to net that bonus floor. And then we're also looking at the placemaking aspects of what the ground floor is going to look like. What we call the public realm. So those activity zones, shared courtyards, outdoor seating, cafe seating, the planter beds, the tree buffers, etc. So our upcoming meeting is actually reviewing just that, is we're identifying what those size requirements and what those design standards look like for the building types that are actually going to be enabled in the centers. And this is actually feedback that all of us here as stakeholders can actually provide to both the planning board and the planning staff or council, saying if you have a specific, you know, outdoor amenity space that you like or that you enjoy being in, feel free to snap a photo of that, send it to us. It's very helpful in figuring out, you know, what we want to make those standards include.
Jeremy?
Yeah.
I also might point out that this presentation will be on our website in the next day or so. So some of these slides, I really am anxious to look at a little bit more carefully.
Without the glare, huh?
Yeah, so we are videoing it, it will be out there. And your slide deck can be up there too, if you want to give it to us.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
So I want to go through just what those centers and hubs are. So we have the North Pole, we have the Maplewood Hub, we have the East Seaview, the Five Corners, Medical District expansion. Those are 3 areas. The West Edmonds Way.
And there's no Highway 99.
So Highway 99, the comprehensive plan, was designated as a no net loss but no net gain, and so we netted the banked zone capacity of what was undeveloped, but we didn't add to it. And I can go back to that matrix that actually shows.
We're not building it all on Highway.
We're building most of it on Highway 99. Most of the growth, most of the 9,000 units that are allocated to us are all, the bulk of it is already enabled along 99. So we're banking that capacity. And so really we're planning for 3,000, don't quote me on this number, I think it's 3,900 units elsewhere.
And those 3,000 units are in these hubs.
Exactly. Yeah, so if you if you remember the matrix breakdown, the missing middle housing only accounted for 42 of our growth allocated units. The rest are going to be in centers and hubs for reasons because those building types that we want to be there will get us to those income levels that we're supposed to plan for. Firdale, stuff like Ballinger. And actually I wanted to do some quick architectural sketches on some of these, showing some buildings, but just ran out of time. So integrating middle housing and neighborhood hubs and centers. So this is a question a lot. Now that we kind of know how middle housing and how the hubs and centers are being divvied up, how do we actually integrate the two? So missing middle integration, again, these are things that you most likely will not notice over time, and I'll show you a case study of why I say that. But these are essentially going to merge into the neighborhood centers and hubs. And so this is a little cross-section transect of the new zones versus what is replacing the existing zones down here. And so the new residential zones are now being switched from RS to LDR. Those are LDR small, LDR medium, and LDR large. And those replaced essentially all the RS single family zones
In the whole city.
in the whole city.
So anywhere in the city, if you have a house there now, someone could come along and tear that house down and build a duplex there.
Correct.
Repeat the question for the group.
Yeah, so what's your name? Diane asked a really good question. So essentially, these zones, anybody can come in, tear down what's existing, and essentially build a duplex or one of the other missing middle housing types that was selected, and that's correct. It's by right. Up to 2 units, up to 4 within a half-mile transit, with the 4th being affordable. So as we transition into the neighborhood centers and hubs, these are our walkable communities. These are where the amenities are going to be stored. These are our multi-use residential buildings. These are the construction types that will net us, allegedly, net us the AMIs needed that we're supposed to be planning for, that 30 to 50% AMI and the 80% AMI thresholds that we're supposed to plan for. Of the height limits of the development limits, most of the centers and hubs are up to 3 stories with a 4th story bonus in selective centers, permitting that they provide like affordable housing or a permanent public owned amenity space.
We have a question here.
Absolutely. So, if you recall, there was a,
Repeat the question, sir.
so she's asking, so no parking in any of these? Not entirely true. So the parking standards that exist in our current code, minus the update that just took place, are still happening. The parking code that, or the parking requirements that just got passed by the Senate, I think Senate Bill 1580 something, those we don't have to enact for another 3 years. And so we opted to push it off to that 3-year mark to really see how this is going to all play out. But for the most part, if somebody comes in and wants to develop one of these guys, they have to abide by the parking ratios that are currently in our code.
Which are what? Which are what?
Let's see. Gosh, you're really putting me on the spot. I want to say it's 1.5 spaces per dwelling unit.
But didn't city council just vote against parking for affordable and senior housing? They said they didn't need it.
So that they voted against, so they didn't vote against, they voted to delay the House bill that came down recently, which reduced the parking even further.
So not doing it for 3 years.
We have a council member with us. You might know the context behind this, Vivian.
It was the mandate, so it was a state mandate that is there based on this new law, and it was whether or not we do it now or whether we do
In
it.
3 years, yeah.
And on those two types, we did accept it now, and on the one type, the regular multifamily, we did not say we'll do it.
That's right. There's a small business aspect to it. So there's small businesses that are less than 3,000 square feet can eliminate parking, which if you know any small business owner, parking is a huge expense towards their bottom line, especially when they're first starting out. And so is that what council essentially eliminated, was the small business one?
No, it was the senior housing and
Oh, okay.
affordable housing.
Copy
And
that.
It's not that it's not allowed, it's that there's not the mandate. But what are people-
They're not
Yeah, it's not as
required,
written,
basically,
yeah.
is what they've said. Which means they're not gonna do it if it's not required. That's the bottom line.
Mhm.
That's not always true.
Where are they gonna park, number one? Where are healthcare providers gonna park and family when they come to take care of their senior family members? Where are they gonna park?
Yeah, so great questions. Questions are, if we're constantly reducing parking, where are seniors going to park? Where are healthcare physicians going to park in these buildings? Those are great questions. And I wish my friend was here. He does the app for Parking Hero. And actually, he's got some really good metrics on how much parking is actually wasted in a development versus how much gets used. And you'd be quite alarmed at how much is required by code versus how much gets used.
I don't believe that for a moment. I 10 years in a condo, and every parking space was used, and if someone had 2 spaces and they had 1 car, they rented their space out. There is no empty parking spaces anywhere.
Well,
Nick was here as well.
What year was your condo building built?
Pardon me?
What year was your condo building built?
1994.
94. So since 94, there's been several parking reforms that have increased the amount of parking spaces. So at the time, your building code had probably a significantly less parking requirement per unit than we do now.
There was 2 parking units per unit. There were 28 parking spaces for these units. It was very generous. Probably more so
Our
than
goal
now.
tonight is not to solve the parking problem in Edmonds. So even though I know you have a lot of questions about parking,
Before you start building something, you need to figure out
Yeah.
parking.
Right.
You don't need to put the cart before the horse.
no, I know that. But we're not here to solve things. We're here to let you know what's in the planning pipeline, so that when you do have the information, you can go to city council and have a conversation about what the facts are in regard to what is on the planning pipeline. So, but I do want to say that we want to leave time for some questions.
Yes.
So,
I
stretch to the
think
end.
I've got like 2 more slides, and I think that's it. So I was recently in Boise, Idaho, who is also going through a similar missing middle housing, neighborhood centers and hubs. And this is actually a new development in their West End neighborhood. And what's intriguing about it is it's of the pedestrian scale that we're currently planning around in our hubs. No more than 3 stories, active ground floors, sidewalks with buffers, and then beyond, it transitions to a neighborhood 3-story building, but then even beyond that, that's where it transitions to single family and missing middle housing. And so beyond, there's actually like duplexes. And in my opinion, it was actually like well done. The pedestrian streetscape was very active. I actually took these photos early in the morning, so I didn't get run over by a car. But during the day, these are heavily used. Whether or not they're used by neighbors of the beyond condition or not is TBD. But essentially, this is kind of what we're going after on the hubs side of things. So change over time. And so I'm going to leave you with this one, because when we upzone, it is natural for us to think like we're going to have drastic change like immediately overnight. It's going to be a fire sale on land, bulldozers are going to show up, they're going to knock everything down and redevelop it, and that's not the case. It's just not true. And so I got a couple of case studies here. So Portland, as you guys might know, they passed the residential infill project back in 2018. It's essentially the same as missing middle housing. It's the same thing as our HB 1110. The 2018 rate of turnover was 1.64 units built per unit demolished, which of the total parcels in Portland, that was 0.5% of the enabled parcels. They just came out with a study or a report last month that the 2024 rate of turnover is 3.88 units built per unit demolished. So what that designates is that whatever they enacted is working. They're actually building those housing types. But if you look here, in a matter of 6 years, the rate of change has only changed really 1.5% of the enabled parcels in the entire city. So I'm going to read you the, another one, Minneapolis, Seattle. Again, these are all places that were at the front end of enabling or enacting legislation to incorporate missing middle housing to spur supply of affordable housing. And again, like in Minneapolis, when they abolished single-family zoning in 2019, less than 1% of the legible lots have actually redeveloped.
I have a question.
Absolutely.
I appreciate what you're showing us there for the cities. We are not Portland, we are not Minneapolis. And what you're proposing is going to, even over time, is going to change the environment in Edmonds, which is the reason why most of us moved here at one point in time. Exactly.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And
I appreciate this, but we're not these cities. We're a small community.
but
One huge
yeah,
town.
this is the data that we have, unfortunately. And so,
I'd like to clarify also, he's not proposing this, he's been given this.
I understand
It's not
that.
like his
I understand that.
Okay.
yeah, there's just, no, I completely get it. If I had a similar, I wish I could use my own hometown of Coeur d'Alene, but they have not adopted their own missing middle housing code. It's about to come up, but there's no data. The only data that we actually have to go by is the ones that didn't wait for the state legislator to abolish things, that actually enacted it ahead of time. And so we're basing it based off of those years in current implementation. So.
I don't know why we have to go to Minneapolis. We can go to Bellevue. They've actually done a great job over there. But again, they have underground parking. They have rooftop views, amenities on the rooftop. It's very nice, and they are the hubs you're talking about. But people have parking. All these designs, I see no parking, and we can all look up our Baskin and Robbins's on Fifth Avenue, and about the time that that's completed, Fifth Avenue is going to explode, because I guarantee you there's not enough parking for those, I don't know, 40 or 50 condos that they've just built there.
These high income though, we're not high income here. We're not playing with our high income.
It doesn't matter.
It does matter.
No, it doesn't. You just build on a smaller scale, but you take the same plan.
But it's a different
And
city.
they didn't sell off any of their parks, they kept all those.
Right, Bellevue's a different city, you can't compare it.
Right. Well, if you look at Houston,
Same
look at
demographics
Houston.
of Edmonds.
Let's have one conversation if we can. I think that's the best way to have this. But let's start with questions. Can we do that?
Yeah, I want to end with, of the percentages of change that I'm outlining, I have not outlined the second bullet point of what the housing types that were actually implemented. And of the cities that have already enacted this, they've mostly implemented ADUs and duplexes and triplexes. Just to kind of put that in the back of your head. So, yes, in my opinion, based on the data, change is still going to be slow over time. And even if we did not have these in place, there would still be some change. Like there's always going to be change. You're always going to get new neighbors. There's always going to be turnover of some kind. There's always going to be new businesses coming in. But it's also, we have many constraints that are slowing down the process, and hence the reason why you don't see the drastic changes that you think you would see when we upzone. So locally, I believe turnover will most likely be incremental and probably visible at a block level. And what I mean by a block level is they're probably going to be selective on these housing types and probably select the corner lots because they're the easiest to implement, and they have 2 street-facing sides to do parking and access. That's it.
So let's start with some questions, and I see that hand right there.
Okay,
If you'd stand up,
stand up.
give us your name, just first name is fine, and then speak loudly. Or else I'll run with the
Okay, I'm
microphone.
Jerry Bernstein, and I have a...
You're not passing the loudly test. So.
Okay,
This one works.
play my hearing aids. Okay, I'm Jerry Bernstein. I spend the summers here in Edmonds. I've lived here for about 25 years. I'm a resident of Arizona. Okay, 2 things. First of all, I want to thank you for your exhaustive presentation, very detailed. One, I am highly skeptical of your projections for population, especially 25 years in the future. I don't care what computer you use or how smart it is.
Just to clarify, he did not make those.
No, you presented it, so I'm commenting on it. The projections are highly, and also it doesn't take into account the effect of the changes in the community on the future population, which is to say, people who might move here now, when they see the changes in 15 or 20 years, they might not move here because the changes make it difficult for it. For example, if parking is reduced, they might say, I can't live here because if I have adequate parking, all the neighbors on my block may not, and so the streets are going to be crowded. And I think this is a serious consideration. As they say, it's very hard to make predictions about the future. And second of all, this half-mile radius around major transit centers may be fine, but you live in a community that has a lot of people who are seniors and retirees, many of whom can't get around. It's very nice now, but in January it's going to be cold and dark and rainy, and asking somebody to walk a half a mile or even a quarter of a mile to a transit with a walker or crutches or whatever it is, or something pushing them, is a whole other thing. And then asking them to come home with groceries, for some people it's going to be extremely difficult. So just put that in when you're in the planning committee, you might just mention it.
Thank you. Other questions? Oh, come on. Oh, I'll take this one here and then Jay Grant.
Hi, my name is Cameron Eck. I've lived here since 2000. I went to high school at Edmonds, Uruguay. I'm currently trying to stay in this community, but it's becoming ever more so expensive. My question is do you foresee that the people moving into these hubs will be more reliant on transportation, which is why parking might not be as big of a consideration at the present moment, and maybe in the future it will come back into the conversation because it's relevant perhaps, but for now it's being back burner just for now.
It's like batteries.
Did that, there we go.
Yeah. Yeah, to answer your question, I would say, in my opinion, I think the intent of it is absolutely to promote more walking, to promote more transit ridership, but our pattern in how we live our lives now, which is very car dominant, probably isn't going away soon. And so, yeah, the transition to really, from car dominant to transit oriented development and taking public transportation, it's probably not going to be the bulk of this generation, but it might be your generation, or it might be a hybrid of my generation. I know when I didn't have kids and it was just me and my wife, yeah, we would take transit everywhere. But now that I have kids, it's impossible to get them to walk one block before they, can't handle it anymore. And they don't even help out with the groceries, so. But yeah, that's a good question. I just think that the intent is there, but I don't think, given our demographics, that it's going to catch on to 100% of us.
Jay.
I'm Jay, I probably don't need that microphone.
Loud.
Louder? Okay, I can speak louder. Anyway, I moved to Edmonds 63 years ago. Question that I'm not sure it's relevant to the law, but we're seeing condominium complexes around the United States that are old enough that the buildings really can't be rehabbed, so they're going to tear them down. Now we have over 200 condominium complexes in the city of Edmonds, a lot down Fifth Avenue. So the question is, if you, I'm sure it depends on the size of the lot, but if you actually tore down multi-family housing under this new law, how would they treat what you could put back?
Yeah, it goes to the comment earlier about the building regulations have changed significantly over time,
Yeah.
like big time. And so there was actually, I won't go back to it, but there was a slide about the builder's report that outlined new construction versus existing construction retrofitting costs. And the existing construction retrofitting cost, at least today, is far less because you're not having to upgrade the entire building to modern codes. So I think now, to your point, it depends on the city, and it depends on the code cycles that they enacted and what they're including. But we're a very liberal state. We love our environment, so therefore we have environmental codes and energy codes. We have acoustical codes, we have fire codes, we have seismic codes. We have all these codes that we have to build to, and it just shoots up the price of construction.
I guess my question would be, if you had a 20-unit multifamily, would you be able to build a 20-unit multifamily back there?
It depends on the land use. If the existing and future land use supports it, yeah, absolutely.
Nicole.
I don't need a mic. Hi, I'm Nicole. I've been in Edmonds since 2021. You alluded to rising costs in permitting and requirements that make construction of homes more challenging. Maybe this is not a question directed at you, perhaps to Vivian, but how are regulations being modified to reduce the burden of construction and permitting to make homes more affordable?
Yeah, great question. It goes back to the litany of House and Senate bills that I showed in that one slide, which most of them, yes, are to increase the cost or increase the supply of housing, but it's also to reduce the barriers on getting a permit. Because I think if anybody in here has ever built anything or developed anything, time is money. And the biggest kryptonite of any developer is uncertainty. And when you add time to the permitting process, you add the opportunity for more regulations to be adopted, even before you get your permit in for intake. And so really the legislature is really working hard to reduce those barriers, hence the reason why some of these missing middle housing, like you're only going to have an administrative review on the design guidance, because both the planning board and the council needs to adopt standards that are understandable and don't have to be interpreted by an architectural design review board.
All right, we got one last question right here with Bill.
Hi, I'm Bill. My question is with all of the density, especially along 99, and those are lower income, generally younger, often families with kids. Where are the kids going to play outside?
I'm really glad you asked that question, because it's one of the reasons why we didn't add any density to the already zoned capacity of 99 as it stands now. And it's also the reason why a lot of planning board members specifically, especially the ones that live in that area, started to question, like, hey, this is our ability to reevaluate 99 and maybe redistribute the growth Because right now they're shouldering the majority of the growth allocated to us. And so that's a great question. Like, the last time I was there, I wouldn't allow my kids to walk up and down that sidewalk, you know? And if you look at the Hazel apartments there, really their amenity space is 2 floors up above the parking deck. So, you know, that's really the only space, the only open space that you can really get to from a safety standpoint. But yeah, that's a great question. And, you know, it kind of goes back to historically how we dealt with growth here. And were we really making 99 a place to live, or were we just dealing with growth just to deal with it, you know? Because yeah, I agree with you. Like, I think we need to be intentional about growth, but we should plan it in a way that allows for all age groups to experience it and be safe.
We're scheduled to conclude it at 8 o'clock. And I do have a few thank yous that I'd like to do, but I would like Jeremy to stay up here. And if someone has a question of Jeremy, that they can come up and ask it to him, and I'm sure he'll give you at least an answer to that in terms of the current planning that's happening in our city. So thank you for coming. I do appreciate that. Right. Okay.
I just wanted to say, we built our house in 1970.
Wait a minute. I'm coming. Because I don't think you can speak loud enough.
Just a comment. When we moved to Edmonds, we bought a lot in May, had our house designed, moved into the house in August. They built the house, we got the Edmonds permit, built the house in 90 days, and moved in. Can that happen now with Edmonds?
It's a pipe dream.
It was a 3,000 square foot house that you built. So I think those days are gone. Those days are gone. So thank you for coming. We just appreciate your being here. I want to thank our videographers and give a thanks to them as well for doing that. As I said earlier, the video will be on our website, and so you can tell your friends to listen in, and you can look at the details more on our website as you see that. Whoops. And then coming up, we don't have an organized meeting like this in August, but we do have a Conversations with Council, which is an early morning meeting, and be looking for that on our website. September 11th, we're visiting the new building in the port, so our meeting will be down there at the port, and we'll be talking about the Port of Edmonds. In October, on October 6th, ECR is going to partner with My Edmonds News, and together we're going to do a joint program on the levee lift and the facts behind the levee lift, which is coming along. And then we don't have a program yet scheduled for November, but December 1st, which is a Monday night, we're doing our annual holiday party with all the elected officials in the Edmonds community. And come, because it's a hoot, it's a lot of fun, and you get to have a one-to-one conversation with your elected officials. So look at those things as you see them there. Let's see, I want to thank Jeremy one more time for coming and giving us all this. And I look forward to seeing you again on September 11th when we do our port program. So thank you very much for being with us. Good night.